Welcome back to Today's English Question, the podcast designed to help you learn English one question at a time. Our mission is simple: expand your vocabulary, improve your confidence, and guide you to talk about everyday topics in natural, real English, while learning a little more about people and, of course, about yourself. Today's English question is, where was your last trip? This is a fantastic question for practicing past tense verbs, prepositions of place, and descriptive language. It's also a great way to share personal experiences and connect with others. So, let's dive in and explore how you can answer this question confidently. First, let's break down the question itself. Where asks for a location. Was is the past tense of to be, indicating that we're talking about something that happened in the past. Your last trip refers to the most recent journey you took, whether it was a short day trip or a long vacation. Now, how can you answer this? The most straightforward answer is to simply state the destination. For example, my last trip was to the mountains. My last trip was to the beach. My last trip was to New York City. But we can and should do better than that. To make your answer more interesting and informative, you can add details. Think about, when was this trip? Who did you go with? What did you do there? What did you see? How did you feel? Let's practice building more detailed answers. Imagine your last trip was to a city. You could say, my last trip was to Paris, France. I went there last summer with my family. We visited the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre Museum. It was an amazing experience. See how much more engaging that is? You've provided context, the destination, the time, the companions, and the activities. Let's try another scenario. Perhaps your last trip was a shorter, more local one. My last trip was to a small town about an hour from here. I went on a day trip last Saturday with my friend Sarah. We explored the local market and had lunch at a cute cafe. It was a relaxing break from my usual routine. Here we used phrases like about an hour from here to describe the distance, and day trip to specify the duration. Relaxing break tells us about the feeling or purpose of the trip. Let's consider different types of trips. If it were a nature trip, my last trip was to a national park. I went hiking and camping for a long weekend. I saw some incredible wildlife and enjoyed the fresh air. It was a great way to disconnect from technology. Notice the use of verbs like hiking and camping, and descriptive adjectives like incredible and fresh. Disconnect from technology is a common reason for nature trips, adding another layer to your answer. What if your last trip was for a specific purpose, like visiting family? My last trip was to visit my grandparents. They live in a different state, so I took a plane. I spent the whole week with them, helping out around the house and catching up. It was lovely to spend quality time together. Here we mentioned the mode of transport, took a plane, and the duration, the whole week. Catching up and quality time are common phrases used when visiting family. Let's think about vocabulary. When we talk about trips, we often use words like vacation, a period of time spent away from home or business in travel or recreation. Journey, an act of traveling from one place to another. Excursion, a short journey or trip, especially one engaged in as a leisure activity. Getaway, a short holiday or vacation. Adventure, an unusual and exciting, typically hazardous, experience or activity. You can also use verbs related to travel. Travel, visit, explore, discover, hike, camp, sightsee, relax, unwind. And prepositions are crucial for specifying location. 2. My last trip was to the coast. In. I stayed in a small hotel. At. We ate lunch at a local restaurant. Near. We found a beautiful spot near the lake. Within. The town is within easy reach of the mountains. Let's put it all together with a few more examples. Example 1. A busy city trip. My last trip was to Tokyo. I went for a week in April. I was there for a business conference, but I managed to do some sightseeing in the evenings. I visited Shibuya Crossing and ate a lot of delicious ramen. It was incredibly vibrant and exciting. Example 2, a relaxing beach trip. My last trip was to a small island in the Caribbean. It was a week-long vacation with my partner. We mostly relaxed on the beach, swam in the ocean, and enjoyed fresh seafood. It was pure paradise. Example 3, a cultural exploration. My last trip was to Rome. I've always wanted to see the Colosseum and the Roman Forum, so I finally booked a flight. I spent 4 days exploring ancient ruins and eating gelato. It felt like stepping back in time. Now it's your turn to practice. Think about your own last trip. Where was it? When did you go? Who were you with? What did you do? What was your favorite part? Try to form a few sentences using the vocabulary and structures we've discussed. Don't worry about making it perfect. The goal is to communicate your experience. For instance, if your last trip was to your hometown to visit your family, you could say, "My last trip was back home to see my parents. I went for the weekend, just a quick visit. We had dinner together, and I helped my dad in the garden. It was nice to be back, even if it was short." Or if you haven't traveled recently for leisure, you could say, "Actually, my last trip was just a visit to a nearby town for a concert. I went by myself last Friday. I enjoyed the music and exploring the town for a few hours before heading home. It was a fun evening out." It's important to remember that a trip doesn't always have to be a grand vacation. A day out, a short drive, or even a visit to another part of your city can count as a trip. The key is to communicate where you went, what you did, and how it made you feel. So, let's try one final, slightly more complex example, incorporating more advanced vocabulary. My most recent excursion was a spontaneous weekend getaway to the Cotswolds in England. I decided to go on a Friday afternoon and drove up there. I stayed in a charming bed and breakfast and spent my time wandering through picturesque villages, enjoying the rolling hills, and sampling some traditional pub fare. It was a much-needed escape from the city bustle, and I felt completely rejuvenated by the end of it. Here we used excursion, spontaneous, getaway, charming, picturesque, rolling hills, sampling, pub fare, and city bustle to add richness and detail. The aim is to build your confidence in sharing these everyday experiences. The more you practice talking about your trips, the more natural it will become. You'll find yourself using a wider range of vocabulary and expressing yourself more fluently. So next time someone asks you, "Where was your last trip?" you'll be ready with a detailed and engaging answer. Record yourself and listen back to identify areas for improvement. Thank you for joining us on today's English question. We hope this episode has helped you feel more comfortable talking about your travels. Remember, every conversation is an opportunity to learn and grow.